So let me start from demand, the oil demand. This year's report does confirm our expectations that we have outlined last year. So in that respect, it is good to see that what we said last year is happening this year. One of them is our expectation for the oil demand growth 2024. Already mid last year, June 2023, we said we would expect global oil demand growth 2024 will be around 1 million barrels per day. And depending on the changes in the policies, economic prospect, this number went a bit higher, a bit lower. But here, my colleagues, Mrs. Bosoni and her colleagues, came up with a similar number. Our expectation of global oil demand growth this year is about 1 million barrels per day. And I'm happy to see that the other, or I should say most of the other commentators and the institutions' expectations are more or less in line with our expectation here. And we do expect that looking at the beyond 2024, oil demand growth will continue to slow down, and before 2030 will plateau and then sees a peak. So what are the drivers of this global oil demand growth slowdown? There are many important drivers, and they have been explained and discussed in depth in our an excellent report, Oil 2024. The colleagues who are interested in those details may look at it. But when I look at the report, what are the key drivers of the slowdown of the global oil demand growth? I see three major drivers. The first one is on the transportation sector. The major penetration, strong penetration of the electric cars in China, in Europe, US, and more in the emerging countries is a key driver. In one of our recent reports, we said that this year we expect more than 1 out of 5 cars in the world sold will be an electric car, and the other indications we are getting from the market is confirming this number, maybe even slightly higher. And more important than that, that sales number, we also see that China, which is the driver of the electric car penetration around the world, because every second car sold in the world, electric cars in China today, we see that the electric cars are becoming cost competitive vis-a-vis their counterpartners in terms of the internal combustion engine cars. So this is transportation sector, plus of course the ongoing efficiency improvements in the transportation sector is another driver. So this is number one driver of our expectation of the global oil demand growth slowdown. The second driver comes from the electricity generation. Today, especially in the Middle East and some North African countries, we see significant amount of oil is used to generate electricity. It's about close to 1.5 million barrels per day, driven by mainly in Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, and the others. And we know that in many of those countries, especially led by Saudi Arabia, there are strong plans in place to replace the oil used for electricity generation by renewables or natural gas. So this is another important driver. Third, and the in my view, perhaps the most important driver here for the slowdown of the global oil demand growth comes from China. Dear colleagues, nobody, I would say nobody, who wants to understand what is happening in the energy markets can afford not to see the change of economic growth prospects in China. When it comes to oil markets, in the last 10 years, about 60% of global oil demand growth came from China alone. And at that time, Chinese economic growth in the last 10 years increased on average slightly higher than 6% per year. And now we assume, and many international institutions, Chinese institutions, everybody expects a slowdown of the Chinese economic growth. This would mean that our expectation, many international institutions' expectations, Chinese growth will slow down economic growth to about 4%. So this will have implications, of course, for the Chinese energy demand in general and oil demand in particular. So putting these three drivers together, what is happening in the transportation sector, what is happening, a specific case, but an important case in terms of the substitution of oil in electricity generation in Middle East and North African countries. And third, China, the largest oil importer of the world, Chinese economy slowdown results in our expectation of the slowing down of oil demand growth following the rebound coming from COVID. And of course, there are sectors which are still pushing the demand up, such as two of them are important in my view. One of them is aviation, with the jet fuel, strong growth coming from jet fuel, and the booming petrochemical sector. These are two important drivers of oil demand in the next years to come. In terms of countries, Asia, as usual, is the main driver. India emerges as a growing demand center there. When it comes to advanced economies, North America, Europe, Japan, and others, the declining trend continues, and our expectation is the oil demand levels for the advanced economies in 2030 will be coming to the level that the advanced economies saw in the 1990s, early 1990s. So, dear colleagues, this is the view on demand, but maybe I should give you a general claimer that this is those numbers that I have tried to highlight to you are based on the current existing policies that the governments have today. And of course, if the government's policies change substantially this or that way, they may have an implication for this demand trajectory. A few words on the supply side. We are seeing a strong growth of supply coming from Americas, basically, so-called non-OPEC countries. Who are they? United States, Canada, Brazil, Guyana. We did look, Mrs. Bosani and her team look project by project around the world, but also in the Americas, and the numbers we are seeing, the growth coming from the non-OPEC supply, especially from Americas, are higher than the global oil demand growth we expect. And this would have implications, of course, for all of us, all the producers and consumers around the world. And one of the implications, with the current policies in place, is current rather high oil spare production capacity, about 6 million barrels per day, will continue to increase, and towards the 2030s will reach around 8 million barrels per day. A major surplus, and in my view, if I am not wrong, it might be one of the highest in the history we are expecting. Of course, if such a development happens, it will have implications on the prices, on the markets, and all the producers will be affected, including those in the United States, the shale producers. So to sum up, dear colleagues, I can tell you that we are going to see some important changes in the oil markets, but of course these are based on the policies that the governments have today. If the policies change in this or that direction, they may have an impact on our numbers, calibration here, higher here, lower there. Or if there were major geopolitical crises, this could have an implication on the oil markets, as we all know, or some major changes on the global economic prospects. Recession here, economic boom there, may have implications on our numbers. But currently, with current policies in place, current economic growth and market expectation, this is the picture we have, and it is, in our view, important for the all producers and also consumers to see these developments, demand, supply, and the resulting implications, to see whether or not their business strategies are in line with these, I would say, new realities of the oil markets.